There's a certain kind of person who never really leaves a conversation. On the outside, it ended hours ago. They said goodbye, they walked away, they went home. But inside their mind, the conversation is still running, word for word. The same sentence, the same awkward pause, the same look on the other person's face, playing on a loop that refuses to stop. They lie in bed at night, and suddenly a moment from 3 days ago flashes back. Something they said that came out wrong, a joke that landed in silence, a reply they gave too quickly. And just like that, their brain hits rewind and plays the whole scene again in high definition. Most people call this being thoughtful or caring too much about others. Some even call it a sign of emotional intelligence. But the truth is, this constant replaying is not a gift. It is a quiet form of self-torture. Because while everyone else has already forgotten the conversation, this person is still trapped inside it, editing it, judging it, living it again and again. And here is the cruelest part. The conversation they keep replaying is almost never the good one. It's the small mistake, the clumsy sentence. The moment they think they were misunderstood, their mind acts like a museum that only displays their failures on permanent exhibition. Today, we're going to break down the psychology of people who replay conversations in their head, why their minds refuse to hit stop, and how they can finally let a conversation end. Welcome back. I'm Soren. Let's get started.
To understand why some people replay conversations endlessly, we need to take the idea of overthinking as a character flaw off the table. This is not about being weak or dramatic. From a neuroscience point of view, this is about a specific brain network that simply doesn't know when to power down. When you finish a task and your mind goes quiet, a system in your brain switches on. Scientists call it the default mode network. It's the brain's screensaver, the activity that runs in the background when you're not focused on anything in particular. For most people, this network drifts toward daydreaming, planning dinner, or random pleasant thoughts. But for people who replay conversations, the default mode network doesn't drift. It investigates. The moment they stop being busy, their mind returns to the scene of the conversation like a detective returning to a crime scene, and it brings a partner with it. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, tags certain memories as emotionally important, especially the ones that involve social risk. An awkward exchange with a coworker feels, to the ancient part of the brain, like a threat to survival. Because thousands of years ago, being rejected by your group could mean death. So the brain decided that social mistakes are worth remembering, worth reviewing, worth replaying until they are solved. The problem is, a past conversation can never be solved. It already happened. There is nothing left to fix. But the brain doesn't know that. It keeps the file open, waiting for a resolution that will never come. Psychologists have a name for this loop. They call it rumination. It is the act of thinking about the same distressing thing over and over without ever moving toward an answer. It feels productive, like you're working through something. But you're not. You're just walking in circles inside the same room. And once you understand this loop, you start to see how it shows up in everyday life. Let's move to sign 1. Sign 1. The midnight courtroom. For most people, lying in bed is a time to rest. But for the person who replays conversations, the moment the lights go off, the trial begins. Their mind becomes a courtroom, and they are not the judge. They are the defendant. The lawyer for the other side replays everything they said wrong, every clumsy word, every moment they think they embarrassed themselves. And they sit there, defenseless, listening to the case against themselves until 2 in the morning. A typical person who says something awkward will cringe for a second and move on. But this person carries it home, lays it on the table, and dissects it under a microscope. They ask themselves, why did I say that? Did they think I was stupid? Should I send a message to explain? This is rumination feeding on social memory, and the more they replay it, the deeper the memory burns into the brain. Neuroscience shows that every time you recall a memory, you don't just play it back, you re-record it. So each replay makes the moment feel more real, more permanent, more important than it ever actually was. The result is exhaustion. They wake up tired, not because their body worked hard, but because their mind spent the whole night in a trial that has no verdict. And that trial doesn't stay in the past. It starts rewriting the script, which brings us to sign 2. Sign 2. Writing the perfect comeback too late. There is a specific kind of frustration that these people know very well. It happens about an hour after a conversation ends, when suddenly the perfect response arrives. The clever line. The calm, confident answer they wish they had given. But it's too late. The moment is gone, and now that perfect sentence has nowhere to go except into the replay. So they rebuild the conversation in their imagination, and this time they win. This time they say the right thing. This time they are smooth, sharp, and in control. Psychologists call this counterfactual thinking, the habit of imagining how things could have gone differently. In small doses, it helps us learn. But for these people, it becomes a private theater where they perform the better version of themselves that never made it to the real stage. The trouble is that the imagined version becomes the standard they hold themselves to. They compare the real, flawed conversation to the flawless one they wrote afterward, and they always lose. They start to believe they are bad at talking, bad at thinking on their feet, when the truth is no one performs at the level of a script written with hours of hindsight. They are competing against an edited version of themselves that simply does not exist. And the longer they stay in this theater, the more they begin to focus on the exact second they think it all went wrong. That fixation is sign 3. Sign 3. Freezing on the one bad frame. A conversation is made of hundreds of moments. Warm ones, neutral ones, forgettable ones. But the replaying mind doesn't keep them all. It zooms in on one frame, usually the worst one, and treats that single second as the summary of the entire interaction. Maybe the other person glanced at their phone for a moment. Maybe there was a half-second pause before they answered. Maybe a smile faded a little too fast. To most people, these are nothing. But to the replaying mind, they are evidence. The brain grabs that one cold detail and builds an entire story around it. They didn't really like what I said. I bored them. Something is off between us now. This is the work of negativity bias, a deep wiring in the human brain that makes negative information feel louder and more important than positive information. Out of an hour of friendly conversation, the brain will protect and replay the 3 seconds that felt uncomfortable. The hippocampus tags it. The amygdala flags it as important, and that single frame gets played on a loop while all the warmth from the rest of the conversation quietly fades away. They end up remembering a good interaction as a bad one, simply because their mind refused to keep anything but the flaw. And what makes this even heavier is that the feelings often don't arrive on time. That delay is sign 4. Sign 4. The emotion that shows up hours later. In the actual conversation, they seem completely fine. They smile, they respond, they hold it together. There's no visible reaction, no sign that anything bothered them. But that's not because nothing did. It's because their emotional processing runs on a delay. In the moment, their mind is too busy managing the interaction, reading the other person, choosing the right words. The feelings get pushed aside to deal with later. And later always comes. Usually when they're finally alone, washing the dishes or driving home, the emotion they skipped over hits all at once. The hurt from a comment they brushed off. The embarrassment they suppressed with a laugh. Suddenly, it's all there, demanding to be felt. attached to a conversation that ended hours ago. This is delayed emotional processing, and it traps them in a strange loop. Because the feeling arrives detached from the moment, they have no way to respond to it in real time. They can't address the comment. They can't ask the question. They can't clear the air. All they can do is replay the scene and feel the emotion they were too busy to feel the first time. They become an audience to their own delayed reactions, watching feelings flood in over a moment that everyone else has already let go. And once the mind learns to replay the past like this, it doesn't stop at the past. It starts rehearsing the future, which is sign 5. Sign 5. Rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet. By now, the replaying mind has learned a lesson. If a conversation can go wrong, and if a wrong conversation will haunt me for days, then I had better prepare. So before an important talk, a phone call, even a simple message, they rehearse. They run through every possible version. What if they say this? Then I'll say that. What if they react badly? What if there's an awkward silence? They walk into the conversation having already lived through 10 imaginary versions of it. And the irony is brutal. All that rehearsing doesn't make them calmer. It makes them more tense, more self-conscious, more likely to stumble over the very words they practiced. This is anticipatory anxiety meeting analysis paralysis. The mind tries to control an unpredictable human moment by scripting it in advance, but conversations don't follow scripts. So when the real moment veers off the rehearsed path, they freeze, and then later they replay it, and the loop begins all over again. The deepest cost of all of this is that they are never truly in the room. They are always one step behind, replaying what just happened, or one step ahead, rehearsing what's coming. The present moment, the only place a real connection can happen, slips by while they're busy editing the footage. And the loneliest part is this. Everyone around them sees someone calm and composed. No one sees the courtroom, the theater, the endless replay running behind their eyes. They carry an entire war inside their head, and they fight it completely alone, because it never occurs to anyone that the quiet, thoughtful person is exhausted from a conversation that ended last Tuesday. So what is the way out for a mind that refuses to stop replaying? They cannot simply force themselves to think less. Telling a replaying mind to stop replaying is like telling someone to stop hearing a song that's already stuck in their head. It doesn't work, and trying only makes it louder. The goal is not to think less. The goal is to change what they do when the replay begins. In therapeutic psychology, this means building a few mental boundaries and practicing 3 freeing principles. Principle 1. The conversation is already over for them. Here is a truth that can set you free. The person you're replaying has almost certainly forgotten the moment that's haunting you. That awkward thing you said, they didn't even register it. They were too busy worrying about their own words, their own image, their own day. The conversation that's still running on a loop in your mind ended, completely, in theirs. You're the only one still in the room. When you truly absorb this, the replay loses its power because you realize you're rehearsing a trial that the other side already left. Principle 2. Name it instead of narrating it. When the replay starts, the mind wants to narrate the whole story again, every detail, every what if. The way to break the loop is to stop narrating and start naming. Instead of diving back into the scene, simply say to yourself, "This is rumination. My mind is replaying again." Neuroscience calls this affect labeling, and brain studies show that the simple act of putting a feeling into words calms the amygdala, the very alarm system driving the loop. You don't argue with the replay. You don't try to solve it. You just name it, like noticing a familiar song on the radio, and let it play in the background without turning up the volume. Principle 3. Give the worry a closing time. A replaying mind treats every hour as an open window for review. So close the window on purpose. Set aside a short, specific time, 10 minutes in the early evening, where you allow yourself to think about the conversation. And when the replay tries to start at midnight, you tell it, "Not now. We'll handle this tomorrow at 6. This sounds almost too simple, but it works, because it gives the brain what it's really asking for. The brain replays because it fears the issue will be forgotten and left unsolved. When you promise it a dedicated time, it can finally relax its grip and let you rest. When you practice this kind of letting go, something quiet and remarkable begins to happen. Your awareness doesn't vanish. You still notice the details. You still care deeply about the people you talk to. But the loop softens. You start to leave conversations in the room where they happened. You begin to trust that a single awkward moment is not the whole story, and that you are allowed to be imperfect in front of other people without paying for it for 3 days. Think of your mind like a record player with a needle stuck in a single groove, playing the same scratched line over and over. For years, you've been listening to that one broken second on repeat, believing it was the whole song. Letting go is simply lifting the needle. The music was never just that scratch. It was the whole conversation, most of which was warm, ordinary, and already forgiven. When you lift the needle, the song plays on, and so do you. These are the people who think deeply and feel deeply. The people who replay the world because they care about getting it right. If you ever meet someone like this, know that their quietness after a conversation is not coldness. It's the sound of a mind that hasn't yet learned how to rest. And if that someone is you, understand that you were never broken. You just have a brain that loves you so much it keeps trying to protect you from a danger that already passed. So let me ask you, of the 5 signs we explored, the midnight courtroom, the perfect comeback too late, freezing on the one bad frame, the delayed emotion, and rehearsing the future, which one plays the loudest in your head? Share it in the comments. You might be surprised how many people are replaying the very same kind of moment tonight, and you are absolutely not alone. If this video helped you feel a little lighter, if it gave you a new way to look at the noise in your own mind, please hit like and share it with someone who is still up at night, replaying a conversation that everyone else has already forgotten. Your understanding today might be exactly the rest they need. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I'm Soren. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what we explore next. Goodbye, and I'll see you next time.